Welcome to the Writer's Corner. This has been a written interview series in our Flawn Substack, but I am being a copycat for Yuki Jackson because she had the fabulous idea to do her interviews by recording them. So the Writer's Corner is a monthly installment in which I'm Dustin Brookshire, hello everybody, interviews writers residing in Florida with a focus on South Florida writers. This April installment features Miami Dade poet Clayre Benzadon. If you don't know Clayre, Clayre received her MFA from the University of Miami and currently works full-time as an educator at Miami Dade College. Her chapbook, Liminal Zenith, was published by SurVision Books in 2019. She was awarded the Alfred Boas Poetry Prize for Linguistic Rewilding, was recently nominated for Pushcart Prize, and has been published in many places, including ANMLY, Olney Magazine, and SWWIM. You can find more about her at ClayreBenzadon.com, and you can Google her name and find a lot of other poems that she's written as well. Thanks for being here, Clayre.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much, Dustin, for having me here. I love you so much for everything that you do for the South Florida poetry community and beyond. So thank you for having me.
You're very kind, and I love your work, so it's fun when you get to share with people and promote people whose work you love and admire. So I'm going to hold up your book for everybody to see it. I actually got this at Books and Books in Coral Gables.
Yay! Support your local bookstore.
So Liminal Zenith turns 4 this year. So I'm wondering, what's one thing that you want people watching this interview to know about this chapbook?
That's a good question. That's a hard question. I think when you have a work that's been out for a while, there's a sort of sense of, I don't know if it's like you're kind of you don't feel like you're moving on per se, but you kind of have this sense of like you love the work, but you also have different opinions maybe of what you were writing when it was written. So this was actually written as an honors college sort of work. So this was during my undergrad. So it's been a while since I actually wrote it, and then it got picked up by someone reached out to me, SurVision. I'm really grateful for them because they really believed in my work and the stuff that I had. So it was really kind of like on a fluke, it feels like. And I'm just so grateful that someone actually decided to really care for my work and they wanted a whole collection for me. I never thought that would be something that would ever end up happening, at least at this point in my writing life. I am still pretty young, not that that really matters, but I don't know. I love the work that's in it, but sometimes I read some of the things and I wonder, not that I want to revise it or anything like that, but I wonder how the trajectory would have been different if I were to have still been revising it. Or maybe I wouldn't have still been revising it. Maybe it would have been a completely different, maybe I would have moved on to a full-length collection, just starting from there if this hadn't been a chapbook. So I kind of feel like, as the title suggests, liminal, it feels like right now for me, I'm in a liminal state of my work, being it still follows the style of the surreal. I love surrealism, and I'm really glad that this work has been able to be highlighted into a more commercial setting, such as Books and Books. Even getting that out there is really wonderful. So being able to highlight that work, and I guess kind of like moving between different sections, like the poem Liminal, kind of talking about childhood, moving through different time points in my life, I guess, or different identities, kind of going from, I guess, the more abstract to like imagistic poems to more about my identity, I would say. Moving between those two different realms is something that I enjoyed being able to do in this chapbook. The opportunity to do that is really something that, again, I never thought or envisioned I would be able to even do in a poetry book. That was not something that I was thinking about when I was writing my honors thesis. I was trying to get poems written, and then all of a sudden, when I was given the opportunity to write a book or to kind of curate it, I had to really think about which poems are going to be included, because I was only given a certain amount for a chapbook.
Well, I didn't know that you were solicited for it as long as we were friends. So that's hella cool. I wish I could have that problem to have to write to a, anybody watching. I'll take some of Claire's energy. Feel free to solicit me or solicit Clayre. We can write a book together. I want some of that
I
energy.
love that.
And I think the answer is going to be no based on something that you said, but I just want to ask because I was thinking about that, how we sometimes look back at poems and think, oh, maybe I should have done this or I could have went here. Have you at any point attempted to tinker with any of the poems that were in here?
Um, I might have. I don't remember specifically. I feel like I may have at some point, even when it was published, because I wanted at some point I did want to get them all published, like before getting the chapbook out. But I don't think that really matters anymore to me because right now I'm trying to do that with my bigger collection. And I realized that maybe it's better if I don't have all the poems published, right? So I don't have to think so much about revising it. I don't know if revising it really makes me give a sense like gives a sense of closure to the pieces. I kind of think that even though I'm like not it's not that I'm far removed from them. I just think that I'm in a different point in my life, which is normal, right? So I think that having them kind of like stand as these pieces, like getting to look back on them in the place that I was in is actually it's a nostalgic feeling. I don't really have any sort of negative feelings toward them. I just think it's again, it's a different kind of point in my life where I think it what it was is that I was kind of starting to play around with the stylistic form is what I would probably say. So it's not that I wasn't well versed or skilled in it. I was just sort of again, I use the term liminal a lot. I want to use that again as like it's kind of that transition point. I'm starting from somewhere and I'm only progressing throughout my short life. Again, it's funny. I feel older than I am. So
There's nothing wrong with being an old spirit. So I think I heard you say we're going to use liminal a lot. So we'll play a shot game. I'm just going to do carbonated water. So every time liminal is said, if you're watching at home, do a shot. Carbonated water. Um, so we both love Maureen Seton. And Maureen receives a note in your dedication in this chapbook. Can you talk a little bit about her impact on your writing? And just as a background, everybody, if you don't know, Maureen Seton's a fabulous, fabulous book. Google her. She has a shit ton of books. And she spent a lot of time in South Florida. And so I think South Florida is always a part of her heart. And any of us that are in South Florida, she is definitely a part of our heart. So just to repeat the question, can you talk about her impact on your writing?
Oh yeah. I mean, before I started the program, I had known about Maureen and I've always wanted to take a class with her. And so when I visited because when I got accepted, I went to the honors reading, the thesis reading for the year that was just graduating before I started. And Maureen just comes up to me and gives me a big hug. And I'm like, wow, this is incredible. I don't think that's something that people usually do. And this was pre-pandemic. Let me just throw that out there also for people who are concerned. But Maureen is just one of those people that like you feel the spiritual energy radiating out of her. Like she just is just the most present, compassionate person and just like has given me so much hope and so much love to my work and really kind of challenged me a lot by just being so open to the things that I wrote. I felt so comfortable being able to just write the things that I don't think I would have ever been able to bring out of myself because of her sense of play, her sense of opportunity in all the discussions that we've ever had in her class. And again, just her being her, like she's not afraid to say like the witty, the sad, and everything else. I also want to give a shout out to all my other MFA like my cohort and my other professors, Mia, Jasmine, Holly. I love you all so much, and you all were super instrumental in getting me to where I am to this day. So I love you all.
Mm-hmm. So what's a poem by Maureen that you really enjoy and why?
There are too many, but I think that one that I come back to a lot is from the book. Well, it's the title, the titular poem, Sweet World. So I'm gonna read that poem actually. Let me just quickly pull that up here.
I was
Okay.
curious if we were going to have the same poem because, I purposely didn't tell you which poem I would have said. So when you said, when you made that comment, I was like, oh, she may be saying the same one.
Oh, really?
You have different ones though.
Okay, okay. All right. Sweet World. I never had a nemesis before. I kinda like it. Felicity Smoke, The Flash. Wonder what I'd be today if I was still married to my Wall Street husband, besides married to a Wall Street husband and puking gin in a silk sheath at Delmonico's. I might be a blonde size 4. I might be a secret Democrat or a weekend lesbian. This morning, 5 planes flew over the yard in a V as I was about to dig into a pile of lavender pancakes al fresco. The V flew low and slow. It flew loud and ominous. It alarmed me, sounding a lot like the war movies of my 50s childhood. My cranky chihuahua was proverbially biting at flies, and I was sitting there, not thinking about hate. Recently, I experienced life with cancer, an intoxicating time richly infused with the liquor of death, but good too, because no one expected much of me, and I was left to my own mind, which is what I'm missing most these days. Unless that's it over there, screeching on 2 wheels around the racetrack. Today, I typed nose instead of song, and I wonder if it was some new app designed to mess with me. I never thought to call the world sweet before. A nemesis can do that for you, make things taste different. Suddenly, you're a hero slash heroine. All this devastation, and you're still standing in the middle of it.
Oh, love it.
I know.
What pulls
Every
that
time.
poem?
So, so good.
What pulls you to that poem?
What pulls me? There are so many things. I mean, it's just I think that there's this balance between like the pacing of the poem, like the sad undertone behind it, but there's like so much humor at the same time. Like I was reading through and I just couldn't help but laugh. Like there, like for example, it was today I typed nose instead of song, and I wondered if it was some new app designed to mess with me. Right. And then we have the line right after that's like so maybe not serious, but it completely takes you for a left turn. Like we're moving between the so Martha Rhodes, when I was taking well, I was an intern at the Palm Beach Poetry Festival. She has this whole lecture on the hot and cold parts of a poem. And there's so many hot points to this poem where we're kind of moving through so many different levels, right? We're going through the climax and then we're also like ending at this other place, so after it was some new app designed to mess with me, I never thought to call the world sweet before, right? We're going into a completely different place, both like spiritually, physically, metaphysically, so and then make things taste different. Like there's so many different senses here, there's so many different metaphors and images. I think that's just kind of where I just love where I'm in terms of place, where I am moving through, where we're at the beginning very in a domestic place, and then we're out into this broader sphere of the world.
Thank you. Before I ask you to read a poem, I have another question about the chapbook. So it's divided into 5 parts. Can you tell us what led you to make that decision?
Yeah, so I'm really into wordplay. So I was doing a lot of etymology work. So titles for me are the hardest thing. So the title came late or as like the last part. And before I was doing titles, I was probably interchanging the title, the temporary title with the section. So like liminal, I mean that didn't even come into the vocabulary really until later. I mostly what I would say probably how these sections came about were through random word generator, probably, maybe not all of them, but I know that the word liminal definitely came from somewhere else, not from my own vocabulary. So I think that just playing around with words, kind of seeing, so taking the word liminal, for example, and finding words within that word, right? And that would spell something out. So like, like angel, right? What are some words that you could come up with? Like, I would take the L and the A and the N, see if that's a word, or limb, right? Limn, right? Like that would be a word, and that's in one of the poems. So I think a lot of the poems were fueled by wordplay rather than actual sense making at first, and I think a lot of the times I would say even still now, not as much anymore. I'm still I'm learning how to balance the sense making with the abstract, but I think a lot of the times I will veer into a different sort of headspace that is not so logical. And I'm not saying that's not something that you can't do at all, but I think the issue with that is that you risk losing your readers a lot of the times. I think that surrealism and the more stream of consciousness is already hard enough for readers. And a lot of the times, I think traditionally we think of poetry as some sort of riddle, which I don't agree with, and I understand why, because it's something that we learn in high school, right? Like we have to learn, like for example, Frost's poem. We have to learn that there is some sort of solution or like a one way to the poem, when that's not it at all. That's not even what the poem is about when we learn like what the interpretation is in high school, for example. Whatever it may be, because I know there's many different answers to that question or right or interpretation. So for me, yeah, just getting like finding different ways of coming into a poem is like the most exciting part. Surprising myself. I mean, right? No surprise to the writer, no surprise to the reader. So just yeah, finding fun and interesting and challenging yourself through the poem. So that's where my sections came from. Just kind of playing with words, trying to find them, and then, taking the ones that were most interesting in terms of the actual etymology. Like, so when I went on like the actual etymology.com, like what it gave me, if I thought it was poetic, like the thing that it was just listed, or I would actually like alternate, play around with it, kind of omit a few things, right? To make it my own too. And then from there I would kind of create a poem from the word, or find some sort of thread that would make sense in terms of the logic or the progression of these poems or sections.
Thanks. I'm going to hold up your book one more time so people can see it, because Clayre is going to read from us. And if you happen to have Claire's book, you can flip it to page 15, because I love looking at the poem when the poet is reading it. So I'm going to be following along, and Clayre is going to read for us Autumn Salad.
All right. Autumn Salad. Bask in melon nectar of today's squelch, Tangelo sweat. Sit next to the persimmon tree, sip bright salmon, stream, current breaking open, fish, ripped scales, severed marigolds, a flame field. You'll want to share it, apricot small part of this trip near the little cottage. Drink up tea the heat brings, cut up carrots, tomatoes, autumn salad split with orange safety, pumpkin sunset, sheltered dusk.
Makes me hungry. I want fruit. I love this. So how did you give us like the origin story for this poem?
Yeah, this was a poem that I spent at probably the most amount of time editing, I would say. Like, how you asked me about how, like, if I would ever go back and edit. This was definitely one of them that I actually did do a lot of revising, because I think, again, going back to the idea of the imagistic, this is very imagistic in the logic of the poem, in the way that it is written. It's not so much where we are physically, maybe. I mean, in my mind, I have a place. And that's kind of what I want, is for anyone to have their own place, you know? It doesn't have to be a specific one. Whatever you come up with in your mind is kind of awesome. So, but I wanted to play around with the idea of orange being kind of the main sort of tone of this poem, if you will. Right? We have melon, persimmon. So I was looking for, I was spending a lot of time looking for, okay, what are some orange fruits and vegetables? What can we do with autumn, right? Like, how can we make that interesting? So those were the questions I was asking myself. Flame field, right? I wanted it to not just be like fire. So I think it's just kind of, honestly, this poem is a lesson or a challenge in metaphor for me. The last part, the pumpkin sunset, like, and then sheltered dusk, those were the lines that took me the longest amount of time to get to. I was playing around with that ending for very long, and then I just realized, you know what, like, I want to play with words. I want pumpkin and sunset to have that assonance, right? Sheltered dusk, maybe a little bit of that, but I think the idea of safety and dusk together is interesting, or maybe not as not something that you put together so much. Maybe not a complete juxtaposition, but yeah, I think about colors, I think about senses, and I think about how can we turn the concept or ideas on its head.
Nice. I think it would make an awesome broadside. In my head, when I hearing you read it, I could just see like the different fruits and the colors all on a broadside with your poem. I think it'd be a hell of a broadside.
I love that. I mean, I'm involved in broadsided press, so I'm also thinking about how the visual, you know, like the actual visual arts, how it connects with poetry. So that's really cool to hear.
So another poem in your book, The Raw Yes, was inspired by Anne Sexton. So when did you discover Sexton?
So I took a class actually called like Plath and Sexton. So it was all about them too. And I was hugely inspired by my professor, Dawn Skorczewski. She's a Sexton and Plath, well, more of a Sexton scholar than a Plath scholar. So she taught me a lot, I want to say, not just about Sexton herself, but through that class, I learned a lot about myself and through Sexton. I mean, I find so much fascination with her life, the way that she wasn't conventionally educated, and she became this like huge poetry force, how she's able to use colloquial language and create such magic, and also surrealism to create such power in her poetry, and to bring women empowerment during a time when that wasn't a thing. There's just so much behind her that I admire.
So I'm curious, when you discovered her to now, has your relationship with the work of Anne Sexton changed? Is it doing anything different for you? And could you talk about that?
I think that when I first read her work, it was a mystery to me. I don't know if I understood it in the way that I now like really know it, like in my heart, like not that I have memorized her work per se, but it's kind of like when I read her work, it's like reading it new again. Like it never gets old to me. It's kind of like it always surprises me, you know? Like the line, I mean, there are so many lines to pull from, but there's one that I was thinking about recently. Once I was beautiful, now I am myself. I mean, in just such a short amount of time, like you are reading through so much of what it means to be a woman, to like mirror that sort of sense of just what does it mean to be beautiful? What does it mean to be yourself, right? How can we play with that? I mean, there's so much in that. And I think just the quiet sort of deceiving simplicity of her work is, and again, the fairy tale sort of magical spiritual energies that run like current through her work is the most surprising and beautiful thing I've ever read before.
Yeah, one of my prize books on my shelf is I found like a really old copy of Transformations. Like I don't remember when it was published, but it's like the white cover, like it's old, and like I snatched it, I think, at a used bookstore in Louisville, I think.
Mm,
I don't let it
wow.
touch it. Um, so back to your poem, The Raw Yes. Would you read that to us now?
Yeah. The raw yes, inspired by Anne Sexton. Tell me what the correct yes means. Is it the silk of skin slipping through my tongue, wrung with fuck as you suck me, wholly fed? Is it me singing for my bedded thirst, the taste of a shared swallowed utterance, lenguaje gemido, my dare to live as a woman of many hearts with a big noise, roasted core of an artichoke, dripping butter, kneeling and pushing on top, while I sip on the stem of your flower, a sore rose. I never not want. Soy la maga de tus sueños. More, come here, delightful refreshment, pura dura. Let me eat you raw entirely.
Thank you. It's a sexy poem too.
Thank you. Yes, it is fun to read. And every time I'm like, wow, I can't believe I wrote this in my undergrad.
There's so much. As a woman of many hearts, I love that part. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely taken from Sexton and some, it had to have been like a transformation or some sort of like heart of heart of gold or hearts or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, it was just again the balance of like language play versus like finding actual images to pull from.
So let's switch gears. And what are you working on now? Do you have a chapbook brewing, a full length, or maybe not working on something, diving into other genres? Like, what is Clayre doing now?
So I'm still I've been working on a full length for a bit now. Um I I think the biggest revision I had made on that full length was when I was doing a residency in Spain. We had a lot of really like quiet time. It kind of felt like not only a writing residency, but a quiet retreat. I mean, it was beautiful. I was in the mountains, but we had a strict curfew. I was the youngest there, which is, the usual thing, but it was a different environment. I thought I would be surrounded by a little bit more diversity. Let's just put it that way. It was not. But anyway, I guess the main thing that I enjoyed besides the food was really the time of quietness really helped me to be serious about going back and doing the more technical thing of, okay, what are my sections doing here? Like, similar to my chapbook sections. I think that the technical parts of like, how do I chronicle my work is still the hardest thing for me right now. So I think what I did was I had to do more research towards the end of I I guess it's like looking through scholars, doing some more spiritual work. So I really had to spend a lot of time looking through and kind of using, because I was doing a bit of documentary poetics as well into my Sephardic Jewish history. So I was trying to do more research, but it's hard. There's not a lot really. I mean, there is, but there isn't online at least. I know there's a lot of books out there, but finding it online was hard. So I spent a lot of time looking for some Jewish scholars, some other spiritual poetic works that I could find that wasn't solely religious, right? I wanted to find something that was a little bit more interesting than that. So I had to really tap into those sources that were not super accessible, I would say, and kind of playing around a little bit more with those sources to work with my work. So I think I ended up using Muriel Rukeyser as like one of my points in a section, using one of her quotes. Some other poets, so kind of working on that part, the more technical, was something that I had worked on more recently. In terms of like the more like even more recent, because that was maybe like a year ago or longer. Right now I'm trying to get myself back into writing. It's been really hard for me because I started a job and it's been a difficult one, and I have no room for creativity as much as I did when I was in my program, surrounded by writers and surrounded by that sort of really good poetry vibe. Um, Being stuck in an office is really hard. So for that type of creativity. So right now I feel like I'm finally getting into it. I'm really lucky because I one of my professors from my MFA program, Mia, reached out to me, and that got me to really be more accountable towards my work. So almost every Saturday, I've been writing. I have been writing stuff. So whether it be drafts, or just a line, I mean, it's more than a line because we do spend, like, Mia's the queen of prompts. So she gives us the best. I'll always come out with something I was not expecting at all. So in terms of just writing, I think right now that's what I need to be doing, is just writing. I'm not thinking, so I haven't been submitting as much as I usually do. I don't have that discipline. Maybe it's not discipline. I think actually it's better for me because I'm not thinking so much about like the outside world in terms of my writing. I'm just thinking about like I need to write for me. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at with that, is just kind of like getting myself to really be back in that space.
Thanks. So that's a nice segue, because I want to ask you, what was the name of the last poem that you had published, and where was it at, and if you can read it for us.
Um, okay. So let me find that because it hasn't been published officially yet. It's coming out in the summer.
Okay.
And it's actually it was from Denise Duhamel's poetry workshop that I attended maybe a few months ago. And Denise had challenged us to write a poem based off of Ocean Vuong and Frank O'Hara's Someday I'll Love. So that was one of the poems that was published. Let me find that one.
That was such a good workshop. That was
It was wonderful. I wrote so much from that. Okay, hold
I
on.
love that.
Yes.
People that are in the Flan Substack are getting a sneak preview of the poem before it comes out.
That's true. Okay. Someday I'll love Clayre Benzadon. One day, word won't underline my last name like it's an ugly mistake. Someday, my name will be crafted out of clay and cursive, out of suns and dawns. Perhaps my name will roar like the wind. Let's change perspective. This woman will learn how to lie down without deliberating so much over her line breaks. Maybe one day her heart will stop being the capital, the core of her fear. Instead, she will be as cool as a feline. She will be able to feel longer than her exhale usually allows. Perhaps she will heal using hexes and X marks. The success. You've got to let go of validation, oh, you old soul. As much as this girl wants to be down with patriarchy, she still likes men. As much as she wants to break capitalism open, she still works until her jaw breaks her open. Clayre, wake up. You are too green to be so jaded. Wake up, live, goddammit.
I love everything. That ending it hits you.
Thank you.
And tell us one more time where that's going to be published in the summer so we can be on the lookout.
It's in Kearney. It's called Kearney.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I am a creature of habit. You know this because you know me. You know me in the real life. And so one of the things I like to do when I close out the interviews that I've been doing in this series is to ask for recommendations from the person I'm interviewing. So I'd like for you to name 2 books and 2 chapbooks by living poets that you think everyone should purchase. After her book, you should be going to purchase her book. But after you purchase Claire's book and you finish this interview, who should everyone purchase?
Okay. So obviously this is like one of the hardest questions ever. But what I would say is Juby's Original Kink, because I love Juby. Not only that, his work is incredible. I mean, the way that he just moves through language and just beat and everything, right? There's so much love, there's so much hurt, there's so much punch in it. So please buy Juby's book, Original Kink. You will not regret it. The other book that I've read recently that I really loved, because I do love pop culture in writing. I don't know a lot about pop culture, but somehow I come back to it as like a nostalgia thing. I'm a Hot Topic kind of person, so I love emo culture. But one book that I thought was real, like they did really well. It's titled 50 Things Kate Bush Me. Let me repeat that. 50 Things Kate Bush Taught Me About the Multiverse. And I believe that's by, let me confirm. That is by Karina McGlynn. And then 2 chapbooks. So the first chapbook, the more recent one that I read was called Erev Gildeen by Adrian Novy. So that also has a lot of pop culture in it. A lot about like Panic at the Disco, Harry Styles, like just a lot of like really fun ways that plays with both like, I guess, the actual artist, but then also the speaker's own work with dealing with mental illness. So kind of having both like the personal and the more broad pop culture being included is really cool, the way that that's worked into it. And then the second chapbook is Love Most of You Too. I I really loved it because again, it's a more recent book chapbook that I've read, and I just think that the speaker's way of being able to like how they communicate with the world and the love that they put out, like in all these different scenarios, with both within like community and family. It's really well written and it's so concise, but you get everything through those small interactions. And they're not small. They're actually not small, but you think they are at first. So again, deceivingly simple. So I really love that book.
That was very kind of you. I'll send you that check for $20 for the I just want to thank you again for making the time out of your busy schedule to be here for the Writers Corner. And everyone, it's Clayre Benzadon, and you can find her at clairebenzadon.com. And Clayre, do you want to share? I know that you're on Twitter. Do you want to share your Twitter handle with everyone that they can find you?
Yeah, both my Instagram and Twitter, it's the same thing. It's at Clayre, Clayre, Benz, Benz. And thank you, Dustin, for having me again. This was really lovely, and I'm just so grateful for you and for all the initiatives that you've done for the poets here.
Oh, you're kind. It only works if people say yes. So thank you for saying yes and just chatting up the evening. Now I feel like I need to go write. So thank you.
Yes, me too.
So stay tuned for next month. Won't share who's coming yet because I haven't booked them yet, but there will be an installment next month. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you again.